Hello, I'm going to be talking about exercise 4 called geometry. If we look at the instructions on the PDF, this is all about shapes and geometry and freehand and creating two compositions. There'll be two sheets for exercise 4. One sheet will be symmetry and the other one will be asymmetry, symmetrical or asymmetrical. And symmetry, as you know, is something that is the same on both sides, giving a mirror line. So for instance, this image I have here is the symmetrical sheet, and the other sheet that I'll create later on is the asymmetrical, which is absence of symmetry. So in this exercise, what you're going to do is you're going to take down first a piece of graph paper, 11 by 17, making sure what? Everything is straight, right? Set it up on your parallel line or your T-square, and then tape the four corners of the graph paper. And then what you're going to do is take a piece of the trace paper, cut it really nice, and take that down as well. I have this taped down with drafting tape. I'll tape the bottom in a second too. But what you're going to do here is create this composition. This is my design. I want you to create obviously something different that's unique, but that is in symmetry, that has symmetry, that is symmetrical. So the first thing you want to do is find that middle from each edge of the graph paper and just draw a light line. It doesn't have to be as thick as mine. It could be thin. It could even be using pencil, 2H. Keep in mind, this is all ink that we're going to be doing on here. And it's a medium-size ink pen. If you want to create some of these geometries using a thicker pen, you can do that as well. That might create a different effect. Maybe you want to create all the thick, triangles in a thick pen, or the hexagons, or the rectangles, or the squares. That's up to you. I'll leave that up. Leave that up to you. But when I started creating this, you want to start at the bottom and go up, and you want to make sure you keep in mind trying to fill the whole field up, right? Don't just stop here with the symmetrical, or when I do the asymmetrical example as well. Try to fill up the whole area. I tried my best. I probably could have went over a bit, maybe came down and make it a little bit more interesting, but I kept this design for now. And when you do this exercise, you want to make sure, let me zoom in here or bring the camera down and show you that when you're doing this exercise, you want to make sure that, for instance, here I'm sort of in between the graph, right, or the grid, which is okay, right? This one here, I'm at the four corners. Well, actually, I'm not. I'm here at these two corners, but for this rectangle, I'm at the midpoint of the square in the graph paper. So that's another way to get a distance or a measurement, right? You can be on all four corners of the square, or you can go into the middle of the square and sort of eye it. And you can do all this with pencil if you're feeling that you want to design your shape first, or your composition first. If you want to do a square, right, that wasn't on the two dots of the graph paper, you can put a point there, right? And you could put a point here, right? That's still some measured distance because you're half in between the line of this little square. You're just going to go over and then, or to here, and then wherever you want to go. Say that's a rectangle. Right? And then you can come back and now ink it in once you're sure of the design. So if you can see my pattern, my triangles, they make sense. They're either at a corner of these graph squares, or they're in the middle of the line of one of the graph squares. Could it be in the center of a square? Sure, it can be. It can be there and there, as long as you're in some sort of module, right? Creating these hexagons, rectangles, squares, and triangles. We're only going to have 4 geometries, okay? So let me lift this back up so you can see see. So in my case, let's do it up a little bit more. In my case here, I did this pattern. It's symmetrical, of course. And what you have to keep in mind is that you have to make sure that whatever you're drawing on either side, right, has to mirror along this line, right? Whether it's right to left or left to right. I think I started on this side, on my right side. And then when I did this first rectangle here, I made sure, it mirrored. And so on. This hexagon here, I had to make sure that either I was on the ends or the ends of the graph of the square or in the middle, but make sure whatever that shape is, hex, that you put it on the other side. You can just see here that everything is mirroring. And this is going to be the first sheet called Symmetry. You can put your name right below it. All freehand guidelines on the corner. And then you'll know, of course, because you're using the graph paper as a reference, and you lift up the trace, you'll have the work. And then what I'm going to do next is I'm going to create this composition with colors. So my choice of colors here, everybody, is going to be, it's sort of going to be like an analogous sort of design here, or coloring scheme that I'm doing. I'm going to be using sort of this green, light green and turquoise to blue. See how that looks. You're free, of course, to use any colors if you want to do an analogous scheme or a complementary or a monochromatic. Go for it. I'd like to see some creativity. But I'm going to assign a color to each geometrical figure, shape. So, for instance, all my triangles will be that color. All my squares will be that color. All my rectangles will be that color, and all my hexes will be that color. So there's 4 shapes, 4 colors. And create a real dynamic, symmetrical composition here. I'd love to see some creativity. I'm going to pause the video and I'll do some coloring.